JD with an interesting take there before we went to break about the idea of a trade. Is it Kevon Looney, Andrew Wiggins, Clay? I mean, if you don't make any other deals, JD, are you really good enough to be a threat in the West? As we know that, the Clippers might be getting James Harden. Harden reportedly eyeballing the Clippers, and we know that Phoenix already has a big three. San Antonio getting better with Wemby. Denver defending champions. Zion Williamson with a multitude of children. And if he gets healthy, how threatening is he? The West seems to be getting better all around them. How do the Warriors get better enough to compete?
Yeah, and look, it's not that I'm saying I think the Warriors should trade Kevon Looney or should trade Andrew Wiggins. I personally wouldn't trade either of them, but I've also put them in a category of untouchable. And I found myself thinking today, if this team does want to get better, how do they go about doing it? Because there really were two ways. You could trade Jordan Poole, you could trade Jonathan Kuminga. You were committed to Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and I added Looney and Wiggins to the mix. But I guess what I'm getting at more is, could there be a package, and there's been nothing reported, but could there be a package where Wiggins and somebody, Kuminga gets you a player that might make you better, or Looney and Kuminga, or Gary Payton II and Kuminga? It's players that have been deemed to be untradeable that, under some circumstances, could they become tradable if you think you can improve the team? I've kind of grandfathered those two specifically, Wiggins and Looney, into the untouchable category with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And the Warriors have said they have to look at everything. And I know it's been reported like everybody was not available, but nobody was untouchable except for Steph. And I don't believe that. But the only real way they can do something significant at this point is to get creative. And getting creative would be potentially trading somebody that you don't want to trade that's not Steph, Clay, or Draymond. Those are off the board. Yeah,
and Andrew Wiggins is making 24.3 this upcoming year, and his contract is very team-friendly over the next 2 years. Then it's a player option in 2026-27. So in terms of a contract that another team might want, Andrew Wiggins, good player, and that contract is certainly a relative bargain. So if you did want to make a bold move, Andrew Wiggins would be the one contract, if I was on another team, that I would look at and say, he's a good player. He's a legitimate frontline player, former number 1 overall pick. And at that salary point, absolutely I would want Andrew Wiggins. So if the Warriors wanted to jumpstart this year, I don't know if Andrew Wiggins, if you could get a player better than him at that price point, but that would be a contract that you could certainly look at.
And again, it wouldn't be him. It wouldn't necessarily be him in a 1-for-1 necessarily, right? Because there are a lot of it. It would be, is he part of a package? And look, Kevon Looney's a bargain in his own right? And somebody that, along with Steph Curry, I mean, those were the best two players the Warriors had in the Sacramento series. I mean, those two basically brought that series home for the Warriors in many different ways. Obviously, Steph going for 50 and Looney doing what he did over the duration of that series against Sabonis and in the games where he started in place of Draymond Green due to Draymond's suspension and then volunteering to come off the bench after that for a couple of games in that series. So, again, I'm not saying the Warriors should do it, but we've all assumed that those two are untouchable at the same rate that Steph, Clay, and Draymond are. Is that fact? Is that 100%? Or would the Warriors look in an attempt to get better and do something bigger to include them in another package that might, with Kuminga, bring back a player that would legitimately move the needle?
We are streaming live on YouTube. Head to youtube.com/957thegame to watch us live. If anyone swears, you get to hear it. Like and subscribe for all 957 The Game content on YouTube. It's Willard and Dibs. JD is in for Willard today on 95.7 The Game. One piece of news that's not obviously confirmed as of yet, but Monty Poole from NBC Sports Bay Area tweeted out about an hour and a half ago, per multiple sources, unrestricted free agent Dario Saric to the Warriors is a high probability. likely, according to one source, and he's a stretch 4, high hoops IQ, good all-around skills. He's 29. He fits the win now approach, and that is a possible fit for the Warriors in terms of a free agent signing. If they can get Dario Saric, JD, at that veteran minimum, how good would that be in terms of an early signing here in the period that starts in 22 minutes?
It'd be really good. That would be a really nice get at somebody that's only 29 years old and can shoot from the three a little bit, 36%, I think, for his career. I think he was 39 last year with the Thunder and Phoenix. And somebody that can score it a little bit, can move the ball a little bit, and provide a complementary aspect to what the Warriors already have on their roster. That'd be a really nice, and somebody that, the Warriors love to go back and try and find high draft pick type players that maybe can become role players. That's something. Wiggins was the first pick in the draft. He becomes somebody that comes over and is a role player. Bogut was the first player in the draft. Like, you can find value. Denver did this in Aaron Gordon, right? Aaron Gordon was somebody that was a 1 on Orlando. You're a mediocre team if he's your 1.
Right.
Let's make him our 4th option. And Denver was able to make him their 4th, and he's a great 4th option and a high pick and a high talent. Saric was somebody that was the 12th pick in the draft and was thought to have star prowess that never quite materialized in injuries and stuff like that. So he fits the Warriors mold without a doubt as somebody that could be a stretch 4, maybe even a little bit of a stretch 5 at times.
Yeah, torn ACL a couple of years ago. He sat out the entire 2021-22 season, came back this past year and played 57 games with Phoenix and OKC. Only about 14 or 15 minutes a game, but a guy, like you said, JD, come in, shoot the 3, maybe grab a rebound or 2. He's a good passer. He's a willing passer. Not necessarily a key piece in what you're trying to do, but kind of a different wrinkle offensively, especially, maybe not the same defender as Otto Porter Jr., who is no longer going to be available, but equally a good shooter, more like a JaMychal Green, but I think with a little bit more of an offensive impact on your team.
And we talked about it a little bit in the changeover, just the fact that the Warriors, if they were able to get Saric, what would that mean for Jonathan Kuminga at that point? Because he's somebody that, at least right now, is penciled in to be the backup to Draymond Green at the 4, and was almost exclusively a 4 last year. Now, look, you're going to play different players in different positions, and there might be nights Saric plays or doesn't play, and Kuminga, and it doesn't affect him at all. So it's twofold. It's not so much does it lessen Kuminga's time on the court, although I do think that's something to at least wonder, but it also makes me wonder if they sign somebody like that, would they be more inclined to start looking at Kuminga as a 3 as opposed to a 4? And I think that's something that Kuminga certainly would welcome.
Right, but is his game right now at the point where he can be a 3? And you mentioned it yesterday, he's got to develop his handle, and I think also not only his 3-point shot, but also his mid-range, just his shooting ability in general.
Yeah, and I didn't bring it up to diminish Kuminga. It's just a fair question as to, well, if you bring in somebody that's going to be the backup 4 on a lot of nights, well, then that means Kuminga, if he's going to play and be on the team, has to play somewhere else. And they've been reluctant to view him as a 3. Not saying he's locked into that for the rest of his career, but he would almost have to be somewhat of a 3 to be able to get minutes at both of those positions. So that would be something that in a way, like, he would have to get better in not just in the ways that they wanted him to get better to play last year, but in a different way than he has been. But I also think that's Kuminga views himself as a more dynamic player. I think that's part of where the disconnect is between he and his camp and the organization, is that he views himself as more of a dynamic player than just a backup 4 who's going to cut and dunk and shoot corner 3s and defend on the ball.
And rebound occasionally, but you have to develop that for yourself into a player that the team can really lean on, and you have to show them that in many other ways, in many other contexts, before they're going to give you that sort of playing time in real time, especially when you're a championship level team.
Yeah, and I also wonder, and I also wonder, would Saric be a 5 too for the Warriors? 6'10",
sure,
but like, would he be a stretch 5 as opposed to a stretch 4? Which then, obviously that wouldn't affect Kuminga and their plans of having him.
Right, probably more of a stretch 5. I mean, you think about who plays the 5 for the Warriors right now. It's Kevon Looney at 6'9", it's Draymond at 6'5", and that's about it. You didn't even play J. Michael Green at 5 very often. He was more of a stretch 4 the way that he went out and played on the perimeter. So if Saric can come in and play that 5 role, and defensively this team is always going to be a little bit of a backwards defensive team because Draymond Green at 6'5", he can play the 5 in certain lineups based on who you're going up against. He's going to be able to guard Nikola Jokic better than Dario Saric would, for example.
Yeah, and just a quick little bit of news here, not a major thing, but I know you'd mentioned Jock Landale, and it looks like Yahoo reporting, Jake Fisher, that the Suns are going to pull the qualifying offer.
Oh, wow.
On Jock Landale. So I know it had been reported they were going to give him the qualifying offer, which would allow them to match. Now it looks like they're going to pull the qualifying offer. So he's somebody that would be on the market in an unrestricted fashion, and Fisher writing that the Suns are going to look at veteran centers on this. So they're going to be maybe in the Warriors marketplace as far as trying to find a backup for DeAndre Ayton.
And where are they in terms of cap room to get potentially like Brook Lopez, or are they more going to be in the straight up veteran minimum market for a backup center?
They'd be in the straight up. They'd be veteran minimum. They might have a mid-level. They might have a taxpayer mid-level if they're not over the second apron. I don't have Phoenix's full financials in front of me, but they don't have cap space, I don't believe, at all.
Free agency beginning here in 15 minutes. It's Willard and Dibs. JD in for Willard here on 95.7 The Game. All eyes on Draymond Green, and when that deal gets announced, it would be an absolute shocker at this point, I think, if Draymond Green does not sign with the Golden State Warriors. And I want to play a little sound from you, JD. This is from a Bleacher Report TikTok. And I don't know if you're familiar with these sorts of content pieces, but there's a spinning logo, and the player is asked to pick a player off each team. So the logo spins, and then Draymond Green will pick one player for his dream starting 5 off each of the logos that spins.
I like it. So it's random. It's random team, but completely. You got to fill it out positionally.
Yeah, positionally, and one player per team per spin. And listen to what Draymond does, especially when he gets to the last team, which is the Wizards.
Cleveland, Darius Garland at the point. Utah, I am taking Lauri Markkanen at the 3. Washington. Who's still on Washington team? Kuz. I'm taking Kuz at the 4. Portland. I'm taking Dalla at the 2. Miami. Bam at the 5. Easy.
How far are they making it?
This team that I just put together, let's see. That team should win, but then they don't have me, Steph, or Clay. So that's an Eastern Conference team. They lose in the finals to the Warriors.
So Washington actually was 3rd. Thank you, Grandy, for correcting me, as always. But he gets to Washington and he laughs. Who's even on Washington? Come on, Draymond. You know who's on Washington. Jordan Poole's on Washington.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
But and he immediately...
I actually forgot about that.
Well, and so did he, apparently.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, and he, so he laughs like, oh, I know who's on Washington, but who's even on Washington? And I love that he's just said, I'm taking Dalla at the 2 from Portland, Dame Dalla, Damian Lillard, but he just, shortens it to Dalla. That's a pretty good team there, and you got Lauri Markkanen in there, and he's got Dalla. But the other part of it, JD, is he says, oh, this team, he's asked how far they would go. Well, they must be in the Eastern Conference, and they can't beat Steph and Clay, which tells me all you need to know about whether or not he's coming back.
No doubt. No doubt about it. And, Lucas had sent something from Mark Stein. I guess it was from earlier in the week. I'm not sure if it had been updated or not, but he's projecting a contract via league sources, 4 years and $100 million range between the Warriors and Draymond Green.
Man, all signs are pointing to that. 4 years and $100 million once free agency commences, which free agency commences, JD, in 12 minutes from now. 4 and 100. What do you think about 4 and 100? That to me, that feels lower than where I thought that it would land.
Well, I remember that the baseline that I had set of 3 and 75, so basically $25 million a year average. When I heard 100, the first thing that he was interested in getting 100, the first thing I thought of was, well, it must be a 4-year deal because that's the only way he's going to get to 100. Now, with some of the indications from Sacramento when they had a boatload of money that they had cleared to potentially go after whoever they want, Detroit, the hometown team for Draymond, then I started to wonder. But I also found it hard, although maybe I got schnookered based on some of the reporting, and we'll see how it ends up shaking out, into thinking that the market was greater for him, that he was going to get more than the 27.6. Like, to me, the one thing I kept coming back to was, why would you get more of an average value? Like, you would get the 27.6 back for a year, or over the duration of the contract, you would get that back, but it wouldn't necessarily mean you would average that because you were going to be going down over time in all likelihood anyway. So that was just one price point that I had tried to evaluate as far. So the point is, I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being 4 and low hundreds.
Yeah, low hundreds is different than 100 to me.
Yeah, 105.
I would be very surprised, and especially if that first year turns out to be lower than 27.6, because why would you leave 27.6 on the table? I know you would do that to get a longer term deal and you'd get $100 million guaranteed, and that's fine, but I'd be hard pressed to believe that Draymond Green is going to take a contract that is worth less than that on an average annual basis than what he was going to get for 1 year.
Well, you're getting the 4th year, which I think is something that is, that's the give and take,
the
right?
Carrot, maybe.
You're taking less average than you were, and so your number's going to go down from what it would have been had he opted in. And it's going to be a more steady average throughout, but you get the 4th year on top. It's like, hey, all right, we'll do the 4th year. If the 4th year is important, if having a 9-figure contract is important to you, well, the only way that's happening is if it's a 4-year deal. But if that's going to happen, it's going to have to be where you're taking less in the AAV compared to what you would have been if you had played the 1 year out on your deal.
But to get
so that makes sense to me.
It does, I guess, in terms of getting that guaranteed for the 4th year. And I wonder, and I see this on Twitter in the comments, I wonder what the 4th year would be in terms of the option. And I've thought all along that it would be a 3-year deal with a 4th year option that'd be a player option. I don't think that Draymond Green would want to sign on for a team option in the 4th year. And yeah, you'd like to have it guaranteed, but if Steph plays out his 3 years and he decides that he's done, and if Klay's not here anymore, does Draymond really want to be here with Kuminga and Wiggins on a player option?
Yeah,
and whoever else is left.
I mean, who knows at that point? I mean, all those guys could be gone at that point. I mean, so I think what Draymond is thinking is looking at that 4th year. I think he's looking at it as, I can make $25 million in a year where maybe I'm a mid-level player or maybe I'm a veteran minimum player at that point in time. So I think that that's to me, the 4th year at 25 is a major win and again, he's giving over the first 3 years, and maybe that is the common ground for the Warriors, is that they're comfortable spreading it out as long as it's less per, because less per allows them to avoid some of the tax markers down the line as they try to manipulate the cap and the tax and the different aprons.
And as we mentioned yesterday, then it would give you a better opportunity to bring Klay Thompson back at a number that Klay would be happy with, knowing that you want to stay underneath that second apron. Mark Stein also reporting that he has heard the same as Monty Poole in terms of Dario Saric, likely to land with the Warriors as well. 888-957-9570. Free agency begins in 8 minutes. It's looking more and more like the Warriors might be done before it even starts. Ty Jerome, they've offered him a qualifying offer, reportedly. Dario Saric is now, it's being reported by Monty Poole that he will be extended an offer for the veteran minimum. And Draymond Green likely coming back. So if the Warriors are basically, JD, done before it starts, I know there'd be one more player out there. Maybe it's a Damian Lee or somebody else on that veteran minimum. But how you feeling about the new look Warriors if it's Ty Jerome back, Draymond back, and Dario Saric in the fold?
Not enough. It's not enough. I mean, they would need a couple of more minimum players at that point. And, Ty Jerome.
Well, only one more they'd only get one more.
Yeah, and that.
If it's Jerome and Saric, there's only room for one more.
Yeah, and that's not enough. That's not good. Like I view Ty Jerome as your 11th to 15th spot, and I know they've said they're not going to have a 15. So I view Ty Jerome as 11 to 14 on this team. Saric, I guess, would be a backup 4, 5. Do they need another 5? They probably can't get one at that point. You're right. Jerome would be the backup ball handler. He'd be like the third point guard, the third ball handler behind Steph and Clay. Behind Steph and Chris Paul. As far as guards go, they would need one more wing type player. They need a Torrey Craig or somebody like that to come over. But I mean, as far as is that good enough? No, I don't think it is good enough at this point.
888-957-9570. Is it good enough if it's Dario Saric and Draymond back and Ty Jerome and whatever other player to fill in that blank? Is that good enough? From the 707, the 4-year, $100 million for Draymond isn't that bad at all. I think that's what he's worth. That's from the Comcast Business text line.